Hi everyone, welcome to this latest edition of Parent School here at Nottingham High School. My name is Mr. Samra and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about nutrition for young people. My role is as the physical wellbeing lead based here in the Wellbeing Centre, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of how you can support nutrition for the young people that you might be living with, your children here at the school, but also you might take a few tidbits of information and carry them over into your own practice as well. So just to start, I'll give you a little bit of a brief contents of what's to come during the session. Just going to recap some of the basics around nutrition and how we can relate them to young people. Do a few FAQs because I appreciate this is a pre-recorded session, so you might not have the opportunity to ask questions as we might in a live virtual session or obviously in person. Going to talk a little bit about building healthy habits and how we can kind of maintain a healthy, positive attitude and relationship with food as well. Talk a little bit about nutrition for young athletes. Obviously, we have a lot of student athletes at the school. Everyone takes part in the PE and games program as we go through the school. So I think it's really important to kind of discuss how things might be tweaked and relate to athletic performance specifically. And then finally, finishing around how things relate to the school. So school catering and support, and also the food and nutrition department. So, and just before we begin, there's just a few disclaimers to run through. So I should highlight that I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian. I can't obviously be giving unsolicited advice around this topic, but where I can offer advice and offer referral and offer a little bit of support is just in general guidelines. So my main goal is to encourage just healthy general practices for young people at the school. I can't, write meal plans. I can't give too much specific bespoke advice around any conditions or anything like that when it comes to medical practice, but I can just offer a little bit of advice, build awareness, and offer some links into other services that might be around the school and obviously outside as well. But I would always say, if you do have any specific concerns about your child or even for yourself, anyone that you know, they should always kind of be, as a first port of call, raised with a GP. At the school, we can always obviously support and have conversations and keep things obviously confidential within families. But I think it's really important that obviously things, concerns are really raised with a GP as a first port of call. And that's often the first point that we'll go to if we do highlight any concerns and when it comes to things like disordered eating. So just to begin by recapping the basics, as we said, so we've got 6 points to run through. The first one being breakfast is brain food. So this is something you've probably heard before, whether it's been worded in that way or slightly differently. But breakfast isn't just really important for our physical well-being, but it can be really important for mental well-being, academic performance as well. Obviously, our students, in general, are doing 5 lessons a day. So I think that volume of kind of information that's going in and stimuli is really important, that we support it and get the day started in the right way. And breakfast is a great way to support that, really, because it can offer a little bit more stimulation to the brain. It can offer a little bit more alertness to the body, and it just offers a little bit less sluggishness as well in terms of going into those first couple of lessons of the day, especially. Fats can be a good thing. That's the second point we want to recap on the basics. So fats are often associated with a negative. We have a negative connotation towards the word fat, especially in relation to nutrition. But however, I think it's really important to highlight that actually fats are an essential part of our diet. They make up an essential part of our, protecting our internal organs, and also can be a major part of our energy consumption as well. So I think it's really important to highlight that fats can be a good thing. It just tends to be trans fats and saturated fats that we want to try and avoid. Alcohol awareness. I'm not going to talk in very much detail about this, but I think it's just important to have conversations, whether it's in the PSHE program that we have at the school or it's conversations that we're having at home, just to provide a little bit of educational awareness around the risks, but also the reality of alcohol and the fact that young people potentially are going to experiment with it. So I think it's important that they have we have an open conversation and relationship when it comes to all elements of nutrition. And on that topic, everything in moderation as well, I think is a really key point. So here we've got an example of a donut. So it's not obviously, the most recommended thing that you eat, whether it's as a snack or, consistently. But I think it's important to highlight that, there are a lot of food options out there, and the philosophy that, a lot of cultures have, and then we have at the school, is that it's about individual choice at the end of the day. So it's encouraging practices that are about moderation. It's important that people are enjoying what they're eating, but also have the education and the support where they understand that they can't just be eating the exact same thing all of the time, whether it's a particularly good or bad thing. It's about having balance and moderation. Hydration is also a key point. So nutrition, we have to think about just the eating, but also the drinking is a big point as well. So hydration is an absolute massive factor to help with all those bodily functions, supporting our day-to-day well-being, and obviously assists in a lot of our metabolic processes as well. And then just to go kind of come back to that point about moderation, balance is a key thing. And I'll pop up the next slide to give a nice visual representation of how generally, this is for UK adults, what is recommended, or general adults, released by NHS England and from the government. And you'll probably see this on any kind of dietary and nutrition-based sources. This is a really nice way just to kind of encapsulate how we want to establish some balance to our general eating. And when I say general, I do mean general, because obviously this is not for everyone. This is specifically designed for male and female adults. Whereas for children, things might be slightly different. For athletes, things might be slightly different. And we will come to talk about that a little bit in a moment. But yeah, I think this is a really nice thing to reinforce and highlight the Eat Well guide. So just to go through a few FAQs, frequently asked questions. So there's again 6 to pop up. First one being, how do I know what health and information to trust when it comes to food and drink? So even, you could ask yourself this, when you're watching this presentation, listening to this presentation, why should you trust the information? So for me, it always comes down to where is the information sourced from, and understanding, is that information brand new? Has it been, peer reviewed? Has it been well understood? Is it well documented? So for me, most of the information that I've got from this presentation has been from my own kind of research and courses. So I've done like an optimum nutrition for health and performance course. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier about, I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, but I'm a personal trainer. So within that course and within that diploma, I did some nutrition research and training as well, and helped assist with some clients as well. And that's obviously something that I've done throughout my career. And then all the other information has come from things like the British Dietitians Association, the British Nutrition Foundation, which is a charity that the government are their main kind of base for nutrition-based information for the public. And then other sources include like Nottinghamshire County Cricket, when they're providing nutritional information for their young athletes. And yeah, so I always try to think about the source of the information and can I trust that source? So for example, I wouldn't just assume that some information that I see on a YouTube link might be real, because obviously anyone can just post on a YouTube link. My immediate thought might be, okay, that's interesting information, but what's the evidence? What is the backup information? And where has it come from originally, if that makes sense? I think it's always good to think about the source of the content that we're, consuming. And especially for young people, there's so much information out there. It's important that we obviously think about where it's coming from and can it be trusted, or is it misinformation potentially? Next question, should we be counting calories? I'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide, actually, but it links nicely to the next question about, is dieting and supplementing worth it? So what I'd say about these kind of points, about dieting, supplementation, and counting calories, is for me, I think the best thing is always just to be focusing on a healthy, balanced diet as an individual. And obviously that accounts for the generalized population, not for people with specific concerns. Those that do have kind of specific concerns or medical conditions, or might be experiencing any injuries or issues, whether it's mental or physical, I think it's important that they are seen to the right people and referred to the right people. So it might be that a dietitian or a nutritionist is to be seen that helps with a bit of dieting, or can support with supplementation, or might help count calories that might be for a specific condition that's going on within an individual. For generalized population, these things aren't generally recommended, because most things can be achieved through just having a healthy and balanced diet. So for example, with supplementation, there's a big craze that has been probably the last 10-15 years about supplementation in the gym environment and having additional bits of protein. Really, if you can't achieve that with your main diet, then that's kind of something that you can then look to implement. But generally speaking, it should be looked to be achieved with a healthy, balanced diet first and foremost. Next question, what do I do if my child really likes unhealthy snacks? It's a really important one. It's a really interesting question as well. I think it's obviously very individual to the child, but I think it's really important to have a healthy relationship with those snacks and healthy relationship with food and nutrition in general. So I think when it comes to this case in particular, if you do have a child that really likes their unhealthy snacks and it's really hard to kind of break those habits, I think the best thing you can do is try and not necessarily just ban things or just say, no, you can't have that all the time. I think there is a time and a place for that, but generally speaking, you want to try and build a healthy relationship with food. So it's encouraging alternative practices or trying to find some middle ground where it might be, rather than just saying you can't have X, Y, and Z completely, it might be a case of saying, right, how can we have that as an alternative, or how can we modify that to make it maybe a little bit healthier, or moderate the frequency, the amount of times per week that you have in it. So it's always trying to think about trying to find some middle ground, I think, so that the child has a bit of a healthier relationship with food and has a little bit more understanding and education as well, rather than just thinking X is good, X is bad. I think sometimes that just won't necessarily compute, and that doesn't compute with us as adults all the time. We can know things are good or bad for us, but it doesn't necessarily change our habits and behaviors towards those things. But it's maybe changing things around it or changing our relationship to that thing that can help improve our relationship. Next question: is the school providing balanced nutritional options? Obviously, I'm biased, but yeah, absolutely. I believe that the school does provide balanced nutritional options for lunch. And we have a lot of different counters around the school. I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation, as I said, when we talk about nutrition at school. And the final question is, how do we encourage healthier habits in young people? So kind of related to that top question about unhealthy snacks. I'll talk a little bit about this further along, where I've got three main points about how you can maybe implement elements of behavior change and encourage healthier habits within your children. I think the general point, and I think the general summary of this whole presentation is all about just building a healthy relationship with food. I think, and the nutrition and drink in general. I think that's the main kind of takeaway I would see from today. So coming back to the question about calorie counting, so personally, I think it can be potentially quite negative, especially on mental health, in terms of having a little bit of a fixation on calories. I absolutely think there's a place for it when it comes to certain training programs, and when it comes to exercise, sports performance, when it comes to very specific dieting for any medical conditions. If people do need to have things really, bespokely portion controlled, then obviously there is absolutely a place for that. But again, this presentation is all about general population and general concerns. So I would say another really good useful tool that you can use rather than counting specific calories is actually counting portion control on your hand. So using individual hand sizes to measure how much protein am I going to have, how many vegetables am I going to have, how many carbohydrates, and what portion of fat is part of my meal. So it's a really nice visual thing that we've got here that you can use. Please do feel free to obviously use this, take it away, see if you find it helpful, and provide me with any feedback. I will provide my email at the end of this presentation. So to come back to our point about building healthy habits. So yeah, as I said, the whole kind of hopefully the takeaway of this presentation is all about thinking about how we build healthy habits and a healthy relationship with nutrition, with our food and drink. So splitting it into three strands, the first point is all about engaging and involving. So trying to engage and involve young people in the process of choosing, of shopping, and of cooking. So I think it can be quite easy as adults just to take that responsibility away, because we think that's our responsibility to be providers, to be providing for young people. But actually involving them in the process, I think, is a really healthy choice and a healthy option to get them a little bit more involved in those processes and help build their relationship and understanding of what actually goes into making food, what goes into selecting food, and what goes into cooking and preparing as well. I think it's really important to involve them in that process, and that can help build healthier habits and a healthier relationship with nutrition. And that kind of links to sustainable practices. So I think what we mean by sustainable is that healthy habits, I think the best ones are the ones that we can actually stick to. So there's no point in, saying, as an example, let's eat, 100 celery sticks in the week or something like that, which can just be a little bit unrealistic. Maybe someone has never liked celery, never likes that particular food. I think you want to try and find things that people actually enjoy and that they're actually going to be sustainable and maintainable for them. I think those are the main things, I think, when it comes to sustainability in terms of reinforcing good, positive habits. And the last thing kind of links to all of them a little bit, but is about preparation. So when it comes to thinking about what food options we're going for, when it comes to thinking about going shopping, cooking and preparing food, I think preparation can be the key thing, because generally speaking, I think a lot of, people speak from personal experience, a lot of research indicates that the less prepared you are when it comes to food, that tends to give a little bit more opportunity and room for unhealthier habits to creep in, because I've not got time to prepare food today, so I'm just going to grab something that might be a little bit quicker and easier, or whatever's accessible nearby, which can often not be the most healthy options. Whereas planning ahead can really help aid in building healthy and a sustainable routine, just because it allows you to think about what your week's going to look like. It can allow you to think ahead. And once you've obviously prepared and planned for everything, it's then a lot more challenging to deviate from that plan, whereas it's easier to deviate when you don't have as much of a plan to begin with. And that final point about preparation links nicely into talking about young athletes and their relationship to nutrition. So the first point is all about kind of more pre-exercise, meeting energy demands. So we often think about, what's important to eat, what's good to eat, but it's also important to think about when to eat as well, and our relationship to the fixtures and the games and the training and everything that we might be doing as a young athlete, or our children might be doing as a young athletes. So thinking about, are they eating an adequate amount of time before the game? Are they, too full in the stomach or not full enough where they might not be able to kind of fully exert themselves? I think it's important to think about when you might eat. The general rule of thumb is anywhere between 2 and 4 hours before. It's good to have a slightly larger meal, and then anywhere between like less than an hour, you might have a snack. So something like a banana or a piece of fruit, to help kind of accommodate smaller bursts of energy as well. And then the next bit is more about post-exercise nutrition. So the 3 Rs, this comes from Nottinghamshire County Cricket. They provide a lot of nice resources around strength and conditioning and nutrition for their academy, but also have all the information online, which is really useful to see. And they have their 3 Rs basically are refuel, repair, and rehydrate. So refuel is all around refueling the body from that burnt energy. So refueling it, replenishing it with carbohydrates primarily, which is our main source of energy. Repair is all about protein, so repairing the muscles that may have, been under a lot of stress from exercise, something like the gym or impact sports like netball, hockey, rugby. They take a lot of toll on the body, so it's important that we kind of repair the muscles and the tissues that are working hard to keep us going afterwards. And protein is a great source of that repair. And then lastly, rehydrating. So making sure that we're replenishing lost liquids. That goes for obviously during exercise, but also especially afterwards as well. And replenishing any lost electrolytes too can help keep our mind and our bodies functioning well after exercise. And then the last point, just very briefly going to touch on this. REDS. So RED stands for Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. And this is basically a phenomenon, condition, there's many words for it. And it can be a form of disordered eating where, young people or anyone of any age really can basically manipulate or have their diet and nutrition manipulated for them to help accommodate for sport and feel under pressure to perform well by staying at a particular weight or avoiding certain foods or emphasizing certain foods. And it can help develop potentially an unhealthy relationship with food and even an unhealthy relationship with their sport or their coaches, teammates, or any other kind of sports personnel. It's just something to be aware of. And if you kind of notice any signs of it, and the signs tend to be changes in female menstruation, there tend to be changes in behavior and mood and attitude, can be kind of having an uncomfortable relationship with coaches, perhaps, because, potentially coaches and authority figures within sport can be of a high influence, or even teammates as well. So it's just something to highlight, just something to be aware of. I think it's really important if you are a parent of a young athlete, just something to be aware of. If you do kind of notice any signs and triggers of that, it's important to kind of speak to your child and ask them, open-ended questions about it, but also seek any kind of professional help. Again, GP being the first port of call if you feel there are any concerns to highlight. So, just as we start to wrap up, I thought it'd be nice to talk a little bit about the school and what we actually provide at the school in terms of nutrition education and actual physical nutrition as well. So, in terms of the food and nutrition department, I'll split this into two. We provide a lot of obviously nutrition education, which isn't just in terms of how to make and prepare and to plan food, but also around the nutritional value of certain foods. So the food and nutrition department are fantastic. They have a lot of resources, one of which I will link in the description of this video that you can check out. It doesn't just tell you, how to make and prepare food. It tells you what is the actual benefit and the value. What is this food going to do for you? And I think the children really respond well to that because they're not just understanding what they're making and what they're doing from a academic point of view when it comes to their food classes. It's actually more the why as well, which I think is really important to highlight. What is the value of it and why is it so important? We all eat, we all drink. It's important to actually understand what the true value of it. And at school, I feel like we really promote that very well. And also with that, it helps build a healthy relationship with food too. through the food and nutrition department and also through the PSHE program, we talk a lot about healthy eating and healthy lifestyle habits throughout the year. So I think building a healthy relationship with food is something that we really want to emphasize at the school. And then, as I mentioned, there are lots of resources that the school provide, and I will link some of those in the description of the video. And then moving over to the other side in terms of catering. So the catering department are absolutely fantastic here at the school, a really fantastic bunch of staff, and they provide a lot of balanced options. So at the school, I appreciate as parents you might not always get to kind of fully see what the school day looks like. So I thought it's a little bit of an insight to understand that there are many counters. So the children generally have 3 to 4 counters that they can choose from, which generally provide quite different options every single day of the week. So it's an opportunity to try different things. Some days, children might want to have a big, massive sit-down meal, and other days they might want to go to the grab-and-go station and grab something that's a little bit more of like a pick-me-up to keep them going for their afternoon lessons. So I think there are lots of balanced options, not just in terms of portion sizes, but also in terms of nutritional value as well. And independent choice, I think, is a big point. So I think that's just really the school's ethos, is providing all that information, all that nutrition education, providing a lot of different balanced options, and then offering the children that independent choice to be able to make their own decisions, which carry over not just throughout their school life, but into later life as well. And then healthy eating campaigns is the last. And this is something within my role that I'm going to be looking at implementing a little bit more with the catering department to help launch a few more healthy eating campaigns. So it might be something like, Mr. Samra's meal of the week, to be able to highlight to the children that will kind of walk past the counters to see like, oh, okay, this is something that has been highlighted to me this week because of its nutritional value, its nutritional content. I might try and link it to certain themes that we run throughout the year, certain events. So it might be if we've got a particular good big sporting event coming up, it might be linked into that on a Wednesday before games, for example. And then just to finish up this presentation, I've just placed on the screen a few links and bits of information, a few reminders as well about general nutritional things at the school. So just on the left-hand side, I've just placed my email. Very welcome to email me if you do have any kind of follow-up questions on the presentation, any information. I'm more than happy to help provide. It might just be simple referral things or simple links and bits of resources. I will happily see a child one-to-one in a physical wellbeing session to have any kind of chats through food. Like I said, I'm obviously not going to provide any meal plans or go anywhere outside of my scope of practice when it comes to offering nutritional advice, but more than happy to kind of offer a little bit of generalized advice and encourage healthy eating habits within the students at our school. Obviously, for any greater concerns, GP is your first port of call, as I've mentioned throughout the presentation. And then you can see the description for a few different links and resources as well. And then just on the right-hand side, just a few little reminders. So school is a nut-free area. It's completely nut-free, completely around the grounds. So we don't offer any foods from the catering point of view or the food and nutrition department. Don't bring in any food that does have any nuts in. And obviously we ask that any children that bring in a packed lunch or bring in any snacks throughout the day, don't bring in anything that contains nuts as well. Snack boosts are really important. So on the topic of bringing in food, obviously the school day is quite a long day for the students. And if they're not eating anything from breakfast when they leave home, especially if they're traveling further away until lunchtime, that can be quite a few hours. And especially if they're quite active, doing a lot of sport, going to games, got PE, having some snack boosts throughout the day is really important. So I'd encourage, if your child wants to bring in, pieces of fruit or healthy snacks, I think that's always a good way to keep them going throughout the day from an academic point of view and a physical point of view as well. And then just to nicely summarize, I think enjoying the process of food is really important. So having that healthy relationship with food and nutrition is key. And I think that's basically the main summary of today. And the main point of making this presentation is all about enjoying that relationship and building healthy habits as well. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen and watch this today. Hope you found some value in it. And I will hopefully see you for another parent school soon. Thank you and take care.